Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at some sample questions and answers for part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. If you're expecting another video on the writing task we've been looking at recently, then don't worry, I'll be getting that video up early next week. But I thought it would be nice just to break the videos up with another speaking video. We haven't done one for a little while, and I thought it would be good to look at some more part 1 sample questions and answers. Now, the questions in this week's video are going to be on the topic of jewellery. Now, this might seem like quite a strange topic to be asked about in the IELTS speaking test, but really, these are the types of topics that are going to come up, topics that you don't really expect. That's what the examiner is trying to do. They're trying to surprise you a little bit, to catch you off guard, to try and hear your natural responses and your normal spoken English. They don't want to hear a scripted or memorized answer from you. They want to hear your normal speaking skills. So they're trying to surprise you a little bit with these types of questions. Now, really, you don't have to worry too much about this because the way you answer these types of questions is very similar. It's not going to change that much your approach to the way you answer the question. My advice to students usually is to use a 2-sentence answer. This kind of makes sure that your answer is nice and clear and concise. It doesn't go on too long. Some students will give answers that are too long in this part because they're trying to impress the examiner. But the problem is they'll probably go off topic a bit or end up repeating themselves a bit if they give answers that are longer than 2 sentences. Now, anything shorter than 2 sentences is probably not great either, though, just because you're not going to be showing the examiner enough to kind of impress them and get a decent score. Now, of course, it is just part 1 and you'll be kind of speaking at length more in part 2 and part 3. So, of course, we just want to show off our fluency and, our ability to communicate clearly and concisely in this part of the test. So, let's first have a look at the questions, and then after that we can look at some answers, and finally we can give those answers a bit of an analysis to see why they're really high-level answers that would be impressing the examiner. So the first question is here. How often do you wear jewellery? There you go. Not the most complex question. It's just a how often question. Now, this style of question is one that often comes up in part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. So we should practice answering these styles of questions. Now, of course, you've got to directly answer the question first and say how often. Well, is it every day? Is it never? Is it sometimes? Is it usually? Right? You've got to answer this question by directly saying how often, and then maybe explaining a bit why afterwards in a second sentence. But that's the first question, nothing too complex there. If we move on to look at the second question, you can see here it says, what type of jewellery do you like best? So a different type of question here, right? We're starting with the word what. So we have to, give examples of the type of jewellery that we do like best. Now, of course, there is a chance that you don't like jewellery, and that's fine. You've just got to answer honestly and directly to that question, and then explain a bit in a second sentence after that. Let's move on and look at the third question. You can see here it's when. When do people like to give jewellery in your country? So again, a different style of question there, starting with the word when. So of course, we need to give examples of times or occasions when people like to give jewellery. And of course, the question is focused on your country. And this is really common in the IELTS test, that they'll end questions like this, making sure you focus on where you come from, something you know about, right? Because it's your country. They're not going to ask you about something that you don't really know anything about. So there we go. That's that question. And again, really just answering with a direct answer followed by a bit of an explanation would be enough for this type of question. Now, the final question is, again, a slightly different one. Have you ever given jewelry to someone as a gift? So here we've got a have you ever question. And this is a type of question that does come up in part 1 of the IELTS speaking test quite often. You can see, of course, it's focused on the present perfect tense. Have you ever given? We're using verb 3 there. So, of course, in the answer, well, you've got to say yes or no. And also, of course, explain why a little bit to extend your answer. But there we go. You can see there 4 questions. Nothing too complicated, but again, a bit of a strange topic, especially if, well, you don't really wear jewelry or like jewelry that much. But again, it's about giving these honest, clear and concise answers and not worrying too much about kind of giving long extended answers here. That's not what we're doing, and you'll see this in the sample answers. So let's start looking at those sample answers. Now, if you remember, the first question was, how often do you wear jewelry? I never really wear jewelry. It's never been something that appeals to me, unless you count a watch as jewelry. What type of jewelry do you like best? Like I said, I don't wear jewelry, so I can't tell you what my favourite type is. However, if a watch is jewelry, then I guess I like that best. But I see it as more functional than something to look nice. When do people like to give jewelry in your country? People usually give jewelry to people on special occasions, such as birthdays, anniversaries, or Christmas. We'd probably give this kind of gift to our spouse or romantic partner. Have you ever given jewelry to someone as a gift? Yes, I've bought things like necklaces, rings, and bracelets for my wife. I know she likes them, but making the right choice is always a little tricky. Okay, there we go. Those are the 4 questions with the 4 answers there. And hopefully you can understand those answers quite clearly and easily. There's nothing massively complex in those answers. We're not trying to do too much. There might be some phrases or words you're a bit unfamiliar with, but now we'll just go through those answers and I can just explain, what is good about these answers and what parts of the answers are going to impress the examiner. So, if you remember the first question, which was how often do you wear jewelry? In the answer here, you can see we've answered very directly with exactly how often. Well, I never really wear jewelry. So of course we've used the word never there, right, to show how often. And also we're copying words from the question, and it's okay to do that. You don't always have to paraphrase the question in your answer. We've got wear jewelry. So using those words directly from the question. It's a really short sentence there to start with, so we really need to extend that answer with a second sentence, which we have. It's never been something that appeals to me. So we've kind of explained why there, why we never wear jewelry. We've linked the sentences, right, by starting with the pronoun it, which refers to wearing jewelry. Also, of course, we're using a slightly different tense here, the present perfect, to explain it's, well, from the past all the way until now, right? It's never been something that appeals to me, that is attractive to me, that makes me want to do it. And then we've extended it a little bit and said, unless you count a watch as jewelry. So quite a nice idiomatic phrase here, to count something as something else, to believe it is that thing. It's quite a nice phrase to use here, quite an idiomatic phrase. And of course, we're just giving an honest answer. Well, of course, in my point of view, a watch isn't really jewelry, but maybe the person I'm speaking to thinks it is. So we've mentioned that at the end as well. So, nice, clear, concise answer, 2 sentences. Nothing particularly complex about it, but it is going to, impress the examiner with some of the way we've been quite flexible with our use of grammar, and we've used some nice idiomatic vocabulary there as well. Now, if we move on to look at the second question, which was, what type of jewelry do you like best? You can see here the answer, again, is 2 sentences. It looks a little bit more extended than the first answer, though. And here we've begun by referring to our previous answer. We've said, like I said, I don't wear jewelry. So we're referring to that answer in the first sentence because it does connect to our answer to this question. Well, we don't wear jewelry, so, well, how can we say what we like best? And we've said that. So I can't tell you what my favorite type is. Now, of course, we've paraphrased a little bit there. Instead of saying like best, we've said my favorite. This is not something you have to worry about or focus on too much, but sometimes you will naturally just paraphrase things in that question. When you're giving nice kind of fluent answers. Then we explain a bit afterwards, right? And we're kind of comparing, because, well, I've said, no, I can't really tell you what my favorite type is, but we said, however, if a watch is jewelry, so again, referring to what we mentioned in the first answer, then I guess I like that best. But of course, it's quite clear in the speaker's opinion that we don't really think a watch is jewelry. And we've explained that a little bit more in the next part of the sentence. But I see it as more functional. So of course, if it's functional, then maybe we wouldn't see it as jewelry, because jewelry is maybe kind of bought for decorative purposes, to look nice. So we see it as more functional than something to look nice. So there we go. We've explained it a bit more and extended the answer a bit. But again, nothing too complicated there, right? We're just giving nice, clear and concise answers. Now, if we move on to the answer to the third question, which was when. When do people like to give jewelry in your country? Of course, we start with a direct answer that actually gives examples of the times or occasions when people do give jewelry to other people. People usually give jewelry to people on special occasions. Nothing too complicated there. That pretty much answers the question directly there. Then we follow it with some examples. We're using the phrase such as here, okay, which we're following with those specific examples. Birthdays, anniversaries, or Christmas. So 3 different examples there. And then we go on in the second sentence to explain it a bit more. We'd probably give this kind of gift to our spouse or romantic partner. Just explaining a bit more, right? Nothing too complex there. Of course, at the beginning, we've used a nice contraction. Instead of saying we would, we've combined those 2 words and said we'd. Now, we is, of course, people in our country. Of course, this is a general question about people in general rather than specifically about the speaker alone. So we'd probably give this kind of gift to our spouse. Now, spouse is a husband or wife. And again, or romantic partner, very similar thing, but of course, romantic partner could be a boyfriend or a girlfriend or something like this. So Again, a nice clear 2-sentence answer. Nothing too long, nothing too short, right? We're keeping it clear and concise. That's the key here. Now, if we move on to the answer to the fourth and final question, which was, have you ever given jewelry to someone as a gift? Now you can see straight away, because it's a have you ever question, we've begun with yes. Now, of course, if you haven't, then it would be no. And we're copying the grammar from the question. I've bought things like, and then so on. But of course, I have bought, making the contraction there, I've, which is nice, is going to impress the examiner with pronunciation skills. And of course, using the present perfect tense that is used in the question. And then we've given those examples: necklaces, rings, and bracelets for my wife. So we've given the person and the example of the jewelry that we've given them. And then we've explained it a bit afterwards. Well, why have we bought jewelry for that person? Well, I know she likes them. This is another way that we're linking the sentences there, them referring to those gifts that were mentioned in the first sentence. And then we've added a bit of extra detail, but making the right choice is always a little tricky. So choosing the right thing that she will like is maybe quite difficult. Tricky, of course, there being a synonym of difficult, a little bit less common as well for non-native speakers. So that could impress the examiner a little as well. But there we go. Those are the answers there. 4 nice, clear and concise answers to 4 typical IELTS Part 1 questions. You can see there's nothing too complex there, but of course we've given nice answers that don't have any mistakes in them, and they're quite flexibly using grammar and a pretty good range of vocabulary as well. Hopefully, looking at these questions and answers was useful to you. Now, if it was, then do remember to click the like button. And if you haven't already, remember to click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any similar videos in the future. But there we go. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next video.